I only have 12 slides in total, just to give you an idea. And this is the most impressive one, I think, is the cover slide. So it's going to be pretty quick to go through this. It's just going to give you a sense of what I do teach on course. We're not going into BPMN in depth, but I wanted to put a course together not just around notation, the BPMN specific notation, but why we want to document our process. So I treat everybody the same when they walk in the door, as if they know absolutely nothing about process mapping or modeling or what it is in general. Not everybody will go on to become a business analyst or a BPMN developer. That's okay. But after the course, most people, if not everybody, can read a BPMN diagram. And that's one of the first goals that I set out. And if you go on to become a modeler, that's even better. So let's go to slide 2.
Okay.
And I just put together some bullets here from the course. Why we document business processes, why do we want to use BPMN? Then look at a simple sample process, which is not in BPMN. Look at the BPMI organization's hourglass. We'll talk more on that when we get to that slide. Look at the BPMN version 2.0 poster, challenges of using BPMN, and then what's in the workshop. Why sign up? Let's go to the next slide. And I should have put page numbers, but I put this deck together very quickly. Why document business process? How many times have you asked the question or heard somebody ask you the question, what is the process for, and then insert whatever they're asking you about here. What's the process for putting in a lead pass? What's the process for submitting my claim? What is the process for X? We ask the question, but we never give a lot of thought to who creates that actual process. Very few people in the organization put pen to paper. But processes need to be documented. It's an important part of making sure that certain tasks are done effectively and efficiently. What do those two terms actually mean? Effectively means that the process works. It gets the job done. And this process could be making a widget or processing a claim. Does it work? Does it work the same way every time? And is it efficient? Are we operating at the best we can operate with the correct number of resources at our disposal to make it cost effective? So a major advantage of documentation is that it provides an important baseline for continuous improvement. How can you improve something if you don't have it documented to know where you're starting from? That documentation can then be reviewed by management alongside the responsible process owner. Do you have process owners? To determine more easily where improvements can be made. For example, we're back at that efficiency. Where can we add automation that can increase our efficiency? And how will it increase our efficiency? And at what cost to make it more effective and efficient? Where are processes today? Normally, in an organization that have not considered documenting their processes, it's usually wandering around in people's heads, on two legs. And unfortunately, as we age out our workforce, that process knowledge, that corporate knowledge goes out the door. And then you're stuck with just the systems and however they were built that have those business rules embedded inside. That's where they are. It makes it very difficult to do an improvement then. Let's go to the next slide. So why document our processes? Continued. How many staff have been trained to actually create process models? Think about your own organization and in your own little unit. How many people have actually been on a course to actually create process models? Or were you just given something like Visio or some other tool and people create the standard flow chart? Is that good enough, or can we do better? What if 10 people were given the same task to create a specific process model, say from a narrative? What notation would each person use? And more importantly, Would each process model be of similar quality? Could they all be read, understood? And that's essentially why we want to model our process. We're trying to convey an idea, knowledge. Can the creative process models be understood by all areas of the business, not just the technical people, but also the business people, the managers, directors, developers? And you may have to do different models for the different target audiences, but that's a different level. We can hide details and extrapolate higher up, because the higher up you go, they don't want to see the details. Just give me the broad strokes. Let's go to the next slide. A standard comic from many years ago. I think you should be more explicit here in step 2, where the guy's pointing, then a miracle occurs. And I've seen a lot of bad process diagrams in my days. I've been doing and teaching BPMN since 2006, and I've had a lot of models presented to me for review or critique, comment, corrections, and there's a lot out there. But they should always provoke thought. That's the number one thing. That's what you're trying to communicate when you document your process, so that when you give it to somebody else to look at, do they understand it? Promote that understanding with your participants of who has to participate within the process and perform some of the activities. Is it easy to understand using the notation that your department uses or you yourself have chosen to use? I remember one time I was into a department talking with a DG that had just finished doing a process modeling exercise, brought in a third party to do it. And he was very proud of his models and showed me some. I looked at the diagrams and I looked back at them and I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this a proprietary notation? And that's when they hung their head and said, yes, unfortunately. And I said, so that means that only this company can come back in and modify these diagrams? And he said, yes to that. So that's telling, and you got to be careful of getting caught up in that. So who else uses your notation that you're picking? Is it proprietary or is it non-proprietary? Let's go to the next slide. So why do we want to use BPMN? Well, one of the most significant benefits of BPMN lies in its ability to produce flowcharts that are as simple or as complex as needed. Now, simple or as complex as needed. It doesn't mean that we're trying to use every shape or object in BPMN toolbox to make a very complex diagram. No, we want to reach in and grab the right tool or object when we need that object for its behavior, how it adds content to the process diagram, because we're describing a specific behavior at a specific point in the process. That makes it easy for business stakeholders at all levels, technical or non-technical, once they understand the notation, that can understand that process map that you've created. In a 2016 survey, 64% of businesses are interested in adopting BPMN to simplify their business process. Think about that, 64%. On a notation that was only released into the public domain in 2005. So this is an amazing uptake in businesses being interested in adopting a standard notation across the board. It also makes it easier for businesses to communicate with each other when you're both using the same notation. The goal is simply, for most companies, save money by reducing costs, that efficiency again, and improving productivity, the effectiveness of the process. Now we can go ahead.
Started to try to anticipate you there, Dave. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So here's that simple process that I was mentioning before. It's not in BPMN, it's more of a visual, but it's what I do on course. So go to work process. It has limited use, question mark. We'll come back to that. But look at this. It's something we can all identify with, our get up and go process. What triggers you to get out of bed in the morning? And we only want to map the process from the time that you wake up to the time that you arrive at work, at your desk, ready to work. And there's a few procedures, high-level activities here, like shower, getting dressed. We see where work instructions, user guides, how they all play or can play or could play a role within the process. Do we look at them all the time? No, because once we read them, we sort of, if we read them, we tend to put them on the shelf and they collect dust. But at least this process is what we do in the morning. At least I would hope some of us do. Now, we may not drive to work. Maybe that's swapped out with take a bus or walk or take a bike. This is where it's limited use. This get up and go process is for you, individual. We can't apply it to everybody across the board. However, if we were to extract the simple activities to a high enough level, we could see we all follow more or less the same routine. And in terms of the high level activity, shower, getting dressed, make breakfast. Now, you may do things in different orders. You may make your breakfast, then go have a shower and get dressed, but you wouldn't get dressed, then have a shower, and you see the point? So the high level stuff is about putting the activities in the right order that makes sense to you in this case. And this is just an icebreaker. Let's go to the next slide. The BPMI hourglass is interesting in terms of where BPMN and BEPL, business process execution language, sort of fit into the mix. And we have our business analysts at the top and software engineers at the bottom. And that is because when BPMN first came out, it was led by Dr. Stephen White, whom I've met. And he's given me an autograph on his book that I bought. So at the side, he liked what he saw I was doing up here. And the whole purpose around BPMN was to bridge this gap between the business side and the developers of the engineering side. That was key. And that means that every shape, every object in BPMN has BEPL structure underneath it. So it can be exported, the diagram itself can be exported to a BEPL format, all right, to be used in a workflow engine. And I don't know if anybody's using Assist on their help desk, but Assist uses BPMN to diagram visually their flow, their workflows, and that's what runs it through BEPL. But the higher up we go in our model, the more abstract we become, and that's where we get into that the right view for the right target audience. So we can shift it down the stack here to get right into the software side, because it's not technology, not systems that we implement, it's processes. And that's what we're trying to get correct each time, that we transition between what the business wants and what the software engineers actually develop for implementation. Let's go to the next slide. BPMN, business process model and notation. They added the model and notation with the version 2 graphical objects. There's over 100 objects. And like I said, each one of these has some BEPL code behind it for behavior. And this is what we go through on the course. Even though it's an introduction, I do cover every shape on the diagram. It's important to me that people that leave my course understand what all the shapes are so they can read a BPMN diagram. They may not be able to create with it very well at the beginning, but they'll be able to read it. That's my goal. However, for the course itself, intro, we'll use something called a simple persona. I don't get into all the shapes, using them on the training. So we'll stick with a standard set. Let's go to the next slide. What are the challenges? Well, determining how to introduce, I said BPMN, but it's really process modeling as a discipline within an organization. That needs senior management commitment. So I heard earlier, SSC, they've standardized on BPMN, and they've standardized on Archimate, and that needed senior management commitment in order to do that. determining process modelers within the organization. Who's going to create these? Who's going to lead them? Who's the guru that they're going to go to get their process models approved? And it's not just rubber stamping. Whoever's doing it has to really understand BPMN. Change management for culture changes to be able to read BPMN models. So that change management, we're not talking ITIL change management, but people, getting into that change management culture. How are we going to do this? Are we going to do handouts, lunch and learn type sessions, that type of thing, to really get that BPMN word out so that the organization can be able to read those models. Central storage, where are we going to put these? We already know you're using QualiWare, and if they're stored and accessible by everybody, that's the way that it should be done. And then what's the standard look and feel? Now you're getting into naming conventions. Are we going left to right with our models? Are we going top down, like they do with EPCs, event-driven process chains? Sorry. So it's up to the organization to determine that. Let's go to the next slide. So we do a quality workshop, QualiWare workshop, bringing in both BPMN, which is where I train all of the elements in the V2.0 map. And at the end of the course, we have the students have an opportunity to work with QualiWare, and they can either bring in their models from their office that they want to work on, or they could recreate some of the models that we work on in class. It's up to the student. Topics we cover, just like we talked about earlier, and we get into that sample process, and I get them to model out that. Some good discussion around how BPMN is implemented where they are and in QualiWare, and then integrated into other types of QLM models. Brief introduction of other process frameworks, such as ITIL, if you're using ITIL, or if you use the APQC's process classification framework. And then exercises designed to reinforce BPMN modeling theory that they learn. So that's what we cover off in those days. It's quite it's a 3-day, but there's a lot of stuff that goes in. Hopefully, some of it will stick, and I find that most people enjoy the course.